And today it's my greatest pleasure to welcome somebody called Betsy Murphy, who's written an amazing book that I've been giggling and loving and at times been reflecting on for the past few days, called Autobiography of an Orgasm. Betsy, thank you so very much for joining me.
Thank you for the invitation to be in conversation with you.
That's awesome. Well, pleasure meeting you. And I've said this before. Thank you for writing this book. I think it's going to be very useful.
Thank you. There's some days I still can't believe I wrote it. It was released in 2014. And I knew when it came out, the one thing I didn't do was I self, published it, but I didn't go after any big name, celebrities, doctors to endorse it. I wanted it to be for all of us. And I didn't want, so I just wanted it to be the type of book that someone reads and they pass it on to somebody else. And that's what it's become. I'm really proud of the book. There's no like sell by date on the book. Everything that I wrote about in 2014 still applies to anybody, reading it today.
I agree. Now, for a little bit of context for everyone who's listening and watching now who hasn't read the book yet, you and I are on a plane and we are sitting next to each other. And I said to you what most people say to each other, which is, what do you do? And my assumption is you're going to say, I'm a writer. Mm-hmm. And then I'll say, what have you written? And you will obviously say, I've written a couple of books, but one of them is called Autobiography of an Orgasm. And I'll say, can you tell me what it is about? Mm-hmm. What would you say to that question?
That's a good question. It's interesting because if it's a man asking me that question, usually they, lean in and kind of laugh and wink at me and go, "Oh, I don't need to, know about that. I'm good at this." And if it's a woman, she'll say, "Tell me more." Mm. And what Autobiography of an Orgasm is about is me on this quest in my mid 40s after. Divorce and every meaningful relationship that I was in not working out, finally realizing and me wanting to blame it on all the men, and me finally realizing, wait, I'm the common person in this. Mm-hmm. And it was a tender moment of me realizing I had been silent for a long time about the things that brought me joy. Yeah. And one of the things was I had never in my life had an orgasm. And I thought something was wrong with me. It wasn't possible, that I was damaged. And within that, I started taking courses and working with experts, to tell me what is wrong with my body, why it wasn't working. And what I did mid research was shift that into me just looking at, I'm just going to try to figure out what's right with my body. We're always focused on what's not working, what's wrong. And at this point, everybody, all the doctors, all my ex-husbands, everybody was telling me what was wrong with me. And I thought, I'm just going to see if there's anything right with me. And within that research came some memories of things that had happened to me, 40 years earlier that I didn't speak up about around not feeling safe in my body. Mm-hmm. And I'm not the only woman in the world. This, is 1 in 3 to 1 in 4 women and 1 in 5 to 1 in 6 men have experienced some sort of assault, abuse, or not feeling safe in their body at some time. And usually in that moment, if we don't speak up, it is stored in the place that we really need to express ourselves. Yeah. So Autobiography of an Orgasm is about my quest in after years of not speaking up to have an orgasm. And I was, I was successful. But I think what people are surprised when they read the book, I think they think it's going to be like, super sexy. And I think it is part of that, but it's also very sincere and very curious. And so many women have said to me, I can put myself in your story. I didn't have the exact story, but I can put yourself in your story. And thank you for telling it, because I'm now curious to see what I can do to make my body feel better, to make my life feel better, to use my voice more. And so it's all connected. Orgasm is our body's natural way of expressing itself. Mm-hmm. And so if you're thinking about, my orgasm, is not, as big as I want, or it's not as long as I want, look at other areas of your life that you're not expressing yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Very well put. Wow. Thank you for sharing. I thought we would start with the end, if it's okay with you, and then we'll reverse engineer your research and your quest. And perhaps you're going to tell me off, and perhaps this is not the end. But I've copied and pasted a few beats of the book that I really, really liked, that really touched me, and I think that people are going to be able to resonate with. And one of them is this. You write, we continued on, you talked about, you mentioned quite a few of your lovers in the book, and I thought that was lovely. And at some point you talk about one, and then you came to a conclusion or a reflection that I thought was very deep, and that's what I'm going to call the end, but please correct me if I'm wrong. We continued as lovers, and on occasion, he would still spank me as a playful way to remind me to speak up for what I wanted. In the end, he told me that my asking for what I wanted was a turn on, and it reminded him to do the same. Mm-hmm. Now, the reason I say this is the end is because silence, being silenced and silencing ourselves, seems to be a recurring theme within the book, and with everyone I've spoken about, especially women who somehow do not express themselves and do not express what they want, either for fear of ridicule or else. And so the ability to break this silence, to me, seems to be the end, as in the end goal. Can we possibly start with this, if this is inspiring enough for you to speak to us about it?
Mm-hmm. Well, that was a big moment for me, because for years I had been trying to be the good girl, been trying to please others, say what others wanted, don't, speak up about the things that make people uncomfortable. Definitely don't share with a man that what he was doing didn't feel good or maybe was hurting me. Mm-hmm. And that was unintentional. I think for men, there haven't been enough women in the world really speaking, their truth about what they need and want. And obviously, especially now, we live in a world where so many of us see porn, we see a lot of online sex that's not, true intimacy. Mm-hmm. And so for me, that moment of finally saying, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. And it's going to change with your orgasm, it's going to change every single minute. You have to be completely present and not tuning out. Yeah. And so that was a big moment, but it took, when I finally was able to feel safe in my body, feel my orgasm and feel beyond my orgasm, what I realized I was missing in my orgasm was my voice, was speaking up. Mm-hmm. And that, I feel like so many of us, as I said earlier, where in your life are you being silenced? I promise you're going to have a better orgasm speaking up. You're going to have a better life speaking up. We can't read each other's minds, but we've been, especially women, trained to or live in a culture that's, telling us, be a good girl, don't make us uncomfortable. And it has been a real turn on with men for me to, say what I want, what feels good. And then it gives them permission to do the same.
Yeah. Yeah. As you find your voice, others feel liberated to do so as well. Mm-hmm. Yes. As a man, I can tell you exactly that it's something that I would second. I find that such a turn on, and also it gives me the opportunity to just say what I like and dislike. But more importantly, I think there is something about trust and faith. Your ability to speak speaks to the comfort that you have with me, and I am one of those people, one of those men who find that attractive. The more at peace, at ease you are with me, the more happy I am with you, so to speak. And you speaking your truth.
Thank you. So can I ask you, if you are being intimate with your partner and you think you're doing a great job and you're so in tune and you've been sharing and speaking up, and suddenly she says to you, can you slow down, or can that doesn't feel good? Can you accept that in your body without, retracting and going, oh, I'm doing it wrong? How is there a way that a partner can say that to you?
Yeah, and for me, yes, it's been the case for a while. Now, don't get me wrong. At times, I'm sure my ego has been hurt by being told off for whatever. But I can't remember when was the last time that a lover of mine, gave me a suggestion and I somehow refused it flat out, or was offended by it, or was not grateful for it. Because the truth of the matter is, I find lovemaking to be such a beautiful form of communication that the more I understand you, the more you allow me to understand you, the better we can discuss. Now, perhaps it's because I'm French. I don't know if it's within the cultural makeup. I don't know if it's my relationship with my mom, which was always very sensual and as such very open. But personally, as a man, I can receive that. But I'll share something private, I guess, with you. For me, it's been the other way around, where I'll put it practically, I only really got into what one would call rough sex in my early 30s, because I grew up dancing zouk, being very sensual, being very slow, very R&B from the 90s, that all of my lovemaking was tended to be on the slow side. And it's only, I remember a lover of mine grabbing my hand and putting it around her throat and go, I want you to rough me up, or something along those lines. It's not that it shocked me, it's that I didn't know how to do it. Because this was not how I thought of sex. This was not how I thought of communicating this and that, if you know what I mean. But I remember moments like this when I was somewhat corrected or engaged into doing something differently, and going, okay, is this working? And then the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. If she calls you back, then I guess the job was decent enough to keep working at it. So yeah, that's my answer to your question. I hope it makes sense.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing. I also think that just because a lover wants that, that moment, it doesn't mean the next moment you up your game and we're going to go even deeper. It might be the completely opposite. So like every new experience with a partner and intimacy, brings a moment for communication of what is going on in our bodies right now and what is feeling good right now. So it may be the complete opposite of, as you were saying, super slow, super sensual, super tender. When 50 Shades of Grey came out, which was at the same time the book came out, and I remember, this great review with the UK Sunday Times, but then it called it the anti 50 Shades of Grey. And at first I was like, oh no, and then it was actually for me a compliment, because 50 Shades of Grey invited in a new conversation for, many people that weren't talking about sex. However, if you had experienced any sort of trauma in your life and were unhealed, it was going to do more damage. And this is what I found in my communities of women, that they were asking for rougher, harder, faster, and it was doing more damage. So I was glad to have the book as a way to show another side.
Yeah, to counterbalance that. Yeah, very true. And it's very easy to hide behind those things. I think you mentioned that also within the book in relation to BDSM and all those things, which I've been researching much more. And I have a Shibari coach coming on the podcast tomorrow, actually, where we're going to be talking about ropes and BDSMs and all those things. But by email, we were already kind of discussing the fact that a lot of us can easily hide behind ropes and external things in order to avoid, kind of looking at those deep, unhealed traumas and things that we'd rather keep buried. Yeah. Okay, so you can agree with me that this is the end, so to speak, in terms of the end goal, finding a voice as cool. So perhaps now we can go to the beginning.
Yeah.
As a plan. 30 days of practice. That's what this whole book and experimentation, you said quest, and I'm going to call it research, really started with. 30 days of stroking. Can you be practical with us and tell us what the stroking was like? What was it like for you to start 30 days from where you came from?
Yeah. Well, so the 30 days of, I just decided on 30 days, and it was a 15-minute practice. So I realized, like, I committed years to, going to the gym, taking time to get manicure, pedicures, hair appointments, and could I commit, any time to trying to find my orgasm, and the first, it was trying to feel good in my body. So I committed to a 15-minute practice for 30 days just to see, because it felt like, if it didn't happen, then it's only 15 minutes a day. And and the idea was me exploring myself. I was so used to thinking somebody was going to give me my orgasm rather than, give it to myself. And also growing up, in a very conservative family where we don't talk about our bodies, we don't talk about sex. So I really came into this, in my 40s as I was just trying to have a beginner's mind with everything. So just curious of stroking around my vulva. What does that feel like? What does the inside of my lips feel like? What is happening with my clit when all this is going on? And I will say at the beginning, when I was, especially when I was stroking my clit, it felt like I was rubbing broken glass on myself. It hurt. And so I just got lighter and lighter and lighter. And it was those moments that I was happy it was only 15 minutes, but I was curious enough to see what was on the other side of that. And there was a moment where that feeling of it was pain and it hurts. And then on the other side of that, when I kept stroking lighter and lighter and lighter, that's where I started, feeling like tingling in my body, where it felt like hummingbirds were all of a sudden fluttering inside my vagina. And so, but even if that was going, great, after 15 minutes, I would just stop. So once it started feeling good after 15, so I was just giving myself no attachment to, to having an orgasm, to this quest. I was stopping after 15 minutes. And what I won't say is what day it happened, because I don't want people to be attached of, well, Betsy did it in this amount of time, and how long is it going to take me? But I will say I was in a hotel room in London, and it was such an intimate moment with myself, of thinking all these years that something was wrong with me, and that I was damaged from abuse and being assaulted, that it wasn't possible. And it was this moment too of, I had taken all these other, courses of waiting for, the sex experts and authorities on my body to tell me how to orgasm. And instead I thought, I'm not giving this away to somebody else. If it's possible for me to have an orgasm, I am the one to give it to me. And it was also this moment of reclamation of my, own voice. So it was, And so after that, I felt like a pro. And what was interesting, it was also at this time of life that I was close to the age of 50. And so finally, like, I figured this out. I'm feeling great. I had to, call the men, and I was writing my book, talk to many of the men that I had, been with in my lifetime, and written about them in the book, my experience with them. I didn't, write about anybody to make them look bad. It was, my own experience. So to have to call up, ex-boyfriends and say, oh, I've got some good news. I never had an orgasm with you, but I can now. I've healed my body, and that's a conversation, that is really hard for men to hold.
Sure.
And one, said, I'm proud of our love story, and another threatened to sue me if I wrote about him, because all they could heard is, that he didn't give me something, and it was never his, to give to me. So. It opened up the orgasm was one thing. But as I was saying, I'm nearing 50, and all of a sudden people are saying, well, great, you figured that out, but you're too, as a woman, you're past your prime. And I'm like, I'm just getting in my prime. I can't be past it. Yeah. So it's been a really beautiful, ongoing experience. And I definitely, as a woman, and I'm 58 now, mm-hmm. I've really redefined what, especially as Americans, how we treat women of a certain age, and, push menopause on them and what their bodies can't do. I'm like, mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm stopping with that.
Good. Yeah. Again, perhaps cultural differences, and again, perhaps about my mom again, but I've always, as far as I can remember, I've always thought that women in their 40s would be getting into their prime. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't be before. That's something that I can't remember when I realized that, or when I was taught that. But I always thought it was common knowledge that actually when a woman gets, close to her menopause, things are actually happening in such a rate, with such an intensity that. And also as a person, you know more of what you like, and more importantly, you know more of what you don't like. And perhaps your voice is also stronger for you to express yourself in relation to those things. So, yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I will say that the focus on menopause is, that our bodies can't give birth anymore, and we can't, but the great thing is all of our organs are not, focused on, giving birth, reproduction. And so mm-hmm. instead, once that's passed, your organs are actually, juicier than ever, and giving, birth to yourself in a new way. So I've found it's been the most fertile time of my life in a complete different way.
Yeah. Yeah. The joke that you shared about this guy making a comment about not wanting a 50-year-old pussy, and you being 49 at the time, and obviously you thought you were much younger. I thought that was one of the parts that really made me giggle and cackle, because I can just see and I can hear that, and I could very much visualize the scene of the three of you just having a good old time, and someone being totally ignorant as to who they were talking to, basically, and about. Interesting. I had a friend of mine called Saida, who you actually mentioned in the book, Saida Desile, on a podcast a few weeks ago, and we talked about the differences in ages between lovers, and how both her, with older men, and myself with older women, basically had learned many of our skills, from basically benefiting from having relationships with people who were older. Again, I don't know if it's a cultural thing, or if it's just my time and when I was born, but for me, women in their 40s and 50s, even up now, I'm 43, and I look up to women like yourself going, wow, I'm sure I could learn so much. Yeah, I thought I mentioned that because there's nothing non-attractive about a 50-year-old woman, especially someone like yourself who's done the work, looked at herself, and is not there to victimize herself.
Thank you. People in the U.S., I've seen many of my friends who, and once again, do whatever feels good to you, but taking shots, doing a lot of intense things to help their body stay younger. And they're always asking me, what are you doing? Your skin looks so good. You look so good. Your inner, and I'm like, orgasm. I go, like, this is, we say that in a funny way, but orgasm with a trusted partner is, and the trusted partner can be yourself, is a way to bring every cell back into balance in your body and promote ultimate wellness. It's like flooding your body with feel good, hormones. So I highly recommend it for at any time, but especially
for longevity and health and looking fresh.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the new saying is an orgasm a day keeps the doctor away. Something like that. Yeah. Okay, we'll just coin it. I'm sure somebody said it before, but let's pretend it's us.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you are saying as long as you are saying it from your turn on. In a book you shared when you've learned to speak from your vagina and the difference that it makes when you speak from down there with such an embodied force as to when you simply say words. I found this section very, very interesting, and also the lessons and the time, because you were on a bed at the time, half naked, and there was a woman in front of you pretending to be a man that... you were talking and sharing about your hearing loss, and you said, "No, pretend I'm a man, but tell me and make it sound as if this is something very, very sexy." Can we possibly speak about that, and what have you been up to with that superpower since then?
Yeah, thank you for asking. This was a moment that I write about in the book where I was in my early 40s, and I realized I was losing my hearing. And the reason I realized that when I was in a dark room with a lover, I couldn't hear what he was saying. And I was thinking he was saying going to go faster. And he was saying, no, slow down. Yeah. And so here, once again, I'm figuring this all out, and finally, being in conversation and intimate moments, and all of a sudden I can't, I'm having a hearing loss where I'm having to, where I can't hear them, and I'm having to, can the room be dark? So what really, there was this moment of like, I was always speaking, from my heart. We follow our heart, but when I dropped down and was really speaking, in the book I write about, I was, speaking from my vagina, but it was really that whole pelvic area of accessing our deep core. And I know singers do this, when they're on stage, performers do this. And most women speak from, the heart on up. Yeah. And we never even access. In the same way, most of us are chronic underbreathers, where we don't take deep, full breaths. We are also chronic underexpressors. Sure. And the quickest way to change your relationship to your health in any moment is just take a deeper breath. And the quickest way to change your relationship to expressing yourself is to, take a deeper breath and then way down into your hips and then speak from that place. And these are things that I love that I'm seeing women in circles that I know getting to so much earlier, women that are getting it to in their 20s and 30s. My daughter is 30, and she's so far from, where I was at that point, so far further along, where it's that, breathing into your core and speaking into your pelvic area is where the most potent version of your voice and expression comes from. And so that has continued. My book, I have turned into a solo show. After the book came out, I was so afraid I noticed when I was reading it out loud or doing book events, I would start, even though I was healed, my voice would start cracking. I would sweat, and I realized, I'm worried about telling this out loud. Even though I'm healed, there's an area of my voice that hasn't healed. Yeah. And so to challenge myself, just like I did with the 30 days of 15 minutes, I was like, well, then I'm going to get up on stage and speak this story. And the first times I would do it, I would almost be in tears. I would, forget it. And now I'm working on my second solo show. So it's, we have to start going to those places that we've been silenced. And for women, it's usually from, like I said, the waist down. Mm-hmm. So once you start opening up that place of expression, you are going to, if you're a writer, you're going to find your most potent version of your writer's voice. If you're a singer, you're going to find a deeper part of your singing voice. If you just want to have a better orgasm, you're going to be able to tune into, what stroke is needed next. And so we've got to open up that area from the waist down.
Yeah, true. I second that. I might have shared this before on this podcast. The best advice I've ever been given, both from a lover, but also someone I looked up to in terms of teaching, because I've been a yoga teacher and a trainer for the past 15 years, was to teach the way I make love. And the reason that she said that to me was because she came to a class when I started teaching perhaps 14, 15 years ago. And I was going into this very egotistical boot camp type of things of telling people and very speaking from my head as to, and I was, I guess, getting angry and angrier, or at least I sounded as such. And at the end of the class, she said, I know you're not going to listen to me because of the way you are. But as soon as you start teaching the way you make love, people are going to melt. And so I think, very, very, very true. Eventually, I took up the advice and really started to teach from a central place where even the music I use is something that I would make love to.
So, I love that.
Yeah, very practical. So, and thank you for sharing. It's very, very, very true. You've taken courses in EMO, Extended Massive Orgasm. That's a very interesting name for a school, as well as other schools. Can you possibly share with us the few schools that the few teachers that you spend time with, what you've learned, and perhaps also those that you would suggest people check out?
So this is a good question, and in the book, I did include teachers. And then before I mention them, I want to say that what I found was people started rushing to, who's the best yoni massage therapist? What man or woman is going to, be the best, and then who's the best EMO person, extended massive orgasm, the master stroker. I talk about it in the book and show, who's going to stroke my clit. And my concern is that we start putting our power back into someone else instead of doing the work ourselves.
Yeah.
So where I really found the most potent version of my orgasm and my own extended massive orgasm and my own beyond that even extended massive orgasm was when I slowed down enough, when I stopped doing the courses, when I stopped going to teachers, was when I slowed down enough and decided I am going to become the expert on my body. And I also know people, need support sometimes. So one of the, original people working with extended massive orgasm is Steve Bodansky. He has books out. And as a friend of mine, Tatiana Arias, who wrote a book about, after she read my book, she said, I want what Betsy's having. I'm going to go see him. But instead she downloaded the video and she said, I thought it was going to be super sexy. And it was just like, seeing people at church. And she said, what I did was start to get out and take notes. And so I love that it inspired her own curiosity. Extended massive orgasm. There are communities, orgasmic meditation communities around the world. Once again, what I found with these communities is, especially for women, if you haven't done your healing, they can be more damaging. So I know you're asking for me to give you some of my recommendations. The one person who I absolutely love, and she's trained other people for yoni massage therapy, is Bonnie Bliss in Australia. And actually, she stopped giving yoni massages I took the training, and I had, people wanting to come, see me so I could support them in their healing and feeling their orgasm. And I thought it was more important to not do that, instead of me being their gateway, I wanted them to be their gateway. So that's my opinion on all of this. And yeah.
Love it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that. Totally. Yeah. Finding ways to empower ourselves is speaks to me of true empowerment, and it's got to start from home. It's got to start with yourself, oneself, and to always go out and research external sources, as you say, whilst useful, because we all need help and guidance. It is also one way to bypass what actually needs to happen, the work that actually needs to be done, and the looks that actually need to be taken at what and how we do things with ourselves. So I understand why you would say and share it this way. Thank you. I'm curious also about you as a writer, because I romanticized the idea of writing a book at some point as well myself. And I'm wondering if the practice of finding your orgasm has been the same, if not useful, in you finding your voice as a writer.
Absolutely. I work with, writers around the world, and especially women. And what I found is women always come to me with, they either want me to write their book, first of all. And I say, I don't do that, but I'll support you in writing yours. Or they have a story that they know they're going to, this is their story. And I'll say, fine. And I want to start with doing these 15-minute writing prompts in the same way I did my 15-minute practice with discovering my what feels good in my body. We do the 15-minute writing prompts. And what happens is with the writing prompts is it takes their mind ego out of what they are determined to write and what is determined to be their story. And it allows their creative, intuitive spirit to come through. And it's only 15 minutes. So I'm like, just trust yourself, just start writing. Even if you repeat the same sentence over and over again, just keep writing and see what comes through. So for instance, a prompt may be, tell about your last kiss. And my head's going to say, my last kiss was my, granddaughter yesterday. That's the story my head's going to write. But if I'm doing it with a 15-minute practice, that could go into, I remember my last kiss with, Henry. It was, 20 years ago. And it might take you completely down a different path. What ends up happening is this place inside you that was never expressed, the story inside you that was never expressed, this place that was maybe silenced comes up. Yeah. And just like in my practice with trying to find my orgasms, sometimes the information that comes up feels like glass coming over your broken glass over your skin. Beyond that is the story that wants to come through. And so it's a really beautiful, I've had people write their books with just doing these 15-minute prompts. And I, because it takes our head out of our stories, and it invites back into your life, those places that you've been silenced. And those places are the most potent version of your writer's voice. Yeah. In the same way with your orgasms, the most potent version of your orgasm is the place that you're not speaking up about right now.
Reading your book, one of the things that I really, really liked, and I say that without apologies, because I'm now comparing it to all the other books from female writers that I've been checking out recently, looking for guests for this podcast. What I absolutely loved was the objectivity from which and with which you speak. And what I mean by that is I go back to what I said 5 minutes ago about finding ways to empower oneself by victimizing oneself. And I read a lot of books nowadays. I download the samples of PDFs from various books. So I get given 15, 20, sometimes 30 pages. But the tone very often is, I am here empowering myself, wanting to empower other people. And this is what has happened to me. And this is who the people who are responsible for that are. Very often is men. Men have caused this, and this is this, or this is society, or patriarchy. And whilst I totally can empathize with people sharing their deepest wounds with people, I always find it a bit of a turn-off, to be honest with you, both as a writer or as a speaker, as a podcaster, and as a man. When someone says to me, I'm now empowering myself by telling you whose fault is it that I am the way I am. You've managed in this book not to do that. And I would commend you for it, because I know it takes a lot of self-work, a lot of soul-searching to somehow take responsibility for things that have happened to you, and quite honestly, things that were forced upon you, that were not your fault back then, and are still not very much your fault, but still finding the I want to say the maturity, and still finding the power and going, you know what? I was attracting this type of dudes. I was attracting this type of relationships because I was in that place where my energy was attracting this type of energy. So I knew I had to make changes. So not only you've done the work, but also you managed to convey that as a writer. And I'm wondering now if, as you were writing those, especially passages within the book where you speak, where you could have easily taken another tone and said, if it's okay for me to share, you shared about the time when you were raped, and how you reflected upon it both before and after. As you wrote that chapter, how many drafts did you, and was that the tone that you started? Was your first draft spoken in that voice of, let me look for also where I can take responsibility?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. And this is something with writing, and especially these 15-minute writing prompts, with this practice is, no, my first drafts were very victimized. I mean, just every bad thing that happened to me. And I just remember thinking, nobody's going to want to read this, and nobody will ever read this. But I needed to know what was beyond that. And so many of us, because I hadn't expressed myself for all those years, I needed to get that out of my body and write it down, at least just for me. And and this is what I see with many writers that I first start, working with, and they've got a pretty happy story to tell and an empowering story to tell. But the first writing that comes up is all the pain and sadness that they never expressed. Just get that out, get that out. It's literally like a detox for your body. We're all so good at detoxing our body with, food and green juice. This is a detox for your spirit, all these things that have been stuffed down. So yes, you get those out, and then your writing begins, your story begins beyond that. Those drafts are part of, your most potent writer's voice. That they're the places where you were silenced. Not all of it has to go in the book. That writing for me was the healing part of writing that I don't even think any therapy would have brought me through. What I did was, bring myself through it. And there are things that we can do when we are writing from those painful spots is only give 15 minutes, get up, shake, bring your body back into balance, scream, go for a walk in nature. So for me, it was taking responsibility for myself, both as a writer and as a woman and as a person living in this body, of stop blaming everything that happened on me and started looking with curiosity of, oh, this happened. This is why I haven't used my voice. And I'm just curious to see if I can change it. One thing that we saw with the Me Too movement, which was very important, people finally started speaking up, but it was from a place of anger. And that's important, but we don't lean into your story when you're just yelling, what happened to me? Where you are going to heal yourself and others is when you can come from a place of, this happened to me and this is why it matters. And so that was really important for me with telling my story. And I think it was especially the men. And I did not, I wrote very little about what happened to me. The story is about how I healed my body and reclaimed my voice and reclaimed my orgasm. But the men were concerned of how they were going to look, in the book. And I said, well, that's your story. So that's your book to write. I'm not writing your story. I'm writing my story. So especially for any of us who are writing difficult stories, you are writing about your own experience, and you're not necessarily going to make everybody look good. But you're also not trying to, I wasn't writing about the experiences, except perhaps with the man that raped me. I wasn't trying to write about, projecting or blaming. What I will say about him, and this is true to this day, he lives out of the country. He doesn't know that he raped me. Okay. Because I never spoke up. And it happened with a friend of mine, and she never spoke up. I think there's a reason why he's living out of the country. But he doesn't know because we never spoke up. And I wasn't writing that to try to go after him. I wrote that scene to show that at that point, if I didn't reclaim my voice and reclaim and respect not what happened to me, but respect my voice enough and my life experience enough to tell the story of how I healed from it. That is the important part of the story to share.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. What have you learned about, and what would you suggest people do with regards to how to communicate with a partner during sex? Because you've learned about yourself.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the communication between two people?
Slow down, come back to the moment, come back to the truth of the moment, come back to the truth of your body. Even if you're concerned about saying something that they might not take the right way, be willing to show up for challenging or difficult conversations, because the way we've been doing it is not coming from a place of you fully expressing yourself. And to be in a relationship, to be in a partnership, to be intimate with somebody where both of us can fully express ourselves in the moment, that's true connection. That's true, truly honoring and respecting yourself and the other person. But we have to be willing to show up for these conversations in ways that maybe we haven't done in the past. And with everything I do now, I'm always like, I'm just, just be curious about it. Just research. If it doesn't go well with this conversation, then try again in another way. But the truth is never going to take you away from yourself.
The truth is never going to take you away from yourself. Cool. Something to write down for sure. Okay. So this is one, but I want to press you for a couple more because I'm sure there's more. Can you give us practical tips? Besides, you've given us one, slow down and really pay attention to your own to your own needs and wants, and be willing to face those what can seem like difficult conversation. Once you have them, actually, I personally believe it brings you closer to your lovers. Do you have any other tips, suggestions?
Oh, goodness. As a woman, we talked about earlier, an orgasm a day keeps the doctor away. Give to yourself what you want somebody else to give to you. So truly know thyself, heal thyself too. Don't come into a partnership expecting someone to heal you. But really, knowing yourself is the most important thing. It was interesting. This was several years ago. And, this was a man that I had met that knew nothing of my past, only knew about the book after he, asked me out. And then I could tell on the first date, he really nervous about, talking to me, even kissing me. And he said, what should I be concerned about, for a woman that knows her orgasm? What should I be concerned about? And, and I said, well, you should be concerned that I'm going to ask for exactly what I want. And you could be concerned that this will potentially be the most satisfying experience that you'll ever have with a woman if you haven't been with women in the past that, truly knows her body and expresses herself. Because as a woman, I know I was with a lot of men that did their absolute best with me, and I was still never asking myself. So they never had to, I was limiting the ability for both of us to receive because I was not asking for what I wanted because I didn't know my body. Yeah. So really know your body and know what turns you on. And even as we started this conversation, you were eating dark chocolate. Like, I love, doing these things, moving my hips, eating dark chocolate, putting on the right music, dancing. These are all ways to lead to really intimate, powerful, expressive, connection. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm having many thoughts, and I'm going back to a couple of things I read in your book, and also I am here purposely silencing myself of the things that I want to share with you that are simply not relevant because I want this conversation to be about you. But yeah, okay. There's a beautiful scene that you share in a book, and also something else that I really love how you wrote it, because it was both empowering and compassionate and everything else, which was that you, I think it was Italy, with a lover who was in a wheelchair. And you shared the lovemaking session that you had with him, and how beautiful it was that whilst he was paralyzed from the waist down, after 10 years of being in a wheelchair, he finally had an erection that lasted quite a while, and even had an ejaculation, which he was surprised by. But the way you shared it was so beautiful, both. And again, something that I've visualized myself doing it. I smiled and smirked at the idea of being such a good listener and lover that you can empower others in finding their own power within their own sensuality, if that makes any sense. So perhaps I'm still here on the communication aspect, or moving on from the communication. You've built such a degree of awareness of your own wants and needs that you are now, tell me if I'm wrong, at a better place to rate and assess when you are with someone new, what they perhaps do not communicate directly to you, but you are able to sense it. Am I putting my finger on something that you can relate to? Or are you too humble to admit that you are a good lover because of the work that you've done with yourself?
Well, I think any of us that have especially done work around our own healing, and then after that healing comes, growth. I'm saying enlightenment, but not in the way of like Buddha. But what happens is you get really clear in your body in the same way that we also, it's not just about healing the wounds from our orgasm and our, bad experiences with lovers or assault. It's also tending to your body in the most holy, sacred way, in the thoughts and how you eat and what you drink and your sleep and who you surround yourself with. And what happens is your intuition just gets, this clear channel. So yes, I think any of us that have done work around our own bodies, and I include my writing in that because I literally had to get 40 years of stories out of me, which, was part of clearing my channel. So yes, I mean, we're all intuitive. And yes, I agree that I can definitely tune in, but I will also, there are ways to communicate beyond speaking, and touch is so important. When I talked earlier about what to most people might not seem like an important practice of, stroking, any part of your body, for whether it's your clit, your vulva, whether it's your hand, slowly stroking yourself. Our fingertips have some of the most, our fingertips have some of the most high, what am I saying here?
Nerve endings?
Yeah, nerve endings, sorry. And so when you're touching somebody, you're not just, slowly rubbing your hand on their body, you're receiving information.
Yeah.
So can you be that tuned in to your partner, to be receiving information, not just the way you look at them, not just from their breath, not just from what they're saying to you, but with you're receiving information from your fingertips. So there's, it's a very much of a heightened experience. And I just keep researching.
That's the way you put it. I love it. Yeah, when I trained as a massage therapist, more than, I want to say close to 20 years ago, somebody mentioned, one of my trainers, that when you touch someone and someone touches you, whilst it's two bodies touching, it's also two nervous systems connecting. Hence, the value of slowing everything down, of the listening to hear as opposed to the listening to reply, both verbally but also physically, or sometimes just being still is actually very, very active. So yeah, I relate to what you were just saying. It seems, we started with the end when I mentioned finding your voice, and communications and obviously self-awareness seems to be very, very important, but communication both with oneself and with others is where it's at. And I love to say that my understanding is that we are the sum of the stories we tell about ourselves. And as such, we need to improve our vocabulary in order to improve our stories. And you had a few phrases that I had to jot down because it kind of reminded me of that and seconded what I've been thinking about communications. You write, after being with many men who had very large cocks and believing that size mattered to both the man and to me, I found the best sex was now with men who communicated and connected before, during, and after sex. So, the art of communication, a big one. Whether you've got a big willy or not, whether you know what you're doing in bed or not, the ability to communicate with a woman, especially for me as a man, this is not a question. Would you say this is the highest skill to be developed for men in order to serve women the best.
Absolutely. And I do want to say to any men out there watching, the size of your cock does not matter. How you communicate, how you connect, how you listen, those are the things that matter. I've had one of the most amazing sensual experiences with a man whose size was, was much, much, much smaller than anyone else. But he was able to slow down and connect and listen to both his body and mind. So, we were given the body that we were given. And so, be grateful and curious about it. And there's no, whatever size and shape you are in whatever part of your body does not limit from having incredible, ultimate sensual experiences with yourself and others.
Yeah, sensual. Beautiful. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you were hoping for me to ask?
Well, what I wanted to mention, because we have talked about the statistics of most of us have experienced some sort of trauma in our life. And after the book Autobiography of an Orgasm, I had so many women and men write to me and say, tell me the 10 things or what are the top 3 things I need to do? I need to heal too. I want you to know that in the same way that you might cut yourself, your body knows how to heal. Your body has already done that healing. If you had trauma in your past, if you've had trauma recently, your body has already done the healing. The energy is in the emotion that hasn't been let go yet, which can keep triggering our central nervous system to believe that we're in danger. And for your body to fully express itself and to fully heal, it needs to be balanced and in a place of calm and peacefulness. And to do that, your central nervous system has to be relaxed. That's the place of healing. If you, and when I'm talking about healing, it's healing those old emotions that can trigger us to believe that we're still in danger, that we're still not safe. So for anybody listening that feels like, I have trauma from 60 years ago, or I've had too much trauma, your body's already done the job of healing. But the best thing is to bring your body back into balance, through meditation, through breath work, through, if you have a partner that you can feel safe with and take it very slow, or do what I did. I didn't want to rely on someone else at that point. And so, I took myself on as an experience. So you can do this healing yourself. You don't have to go out and find the best yoni massage therapist. You don't have to read my book. You have to start listening less to everybody else and more to yourself. And your body will guide you there. And it might be some uncomfortable conversations with yourself, but you have to be willing to show up and listen to yourself. So many of us are avoiding listening to ourselves. That's why we go find other teachers and other people to give us what we want, instead of taking the time to listen to yourself. Because anybody out there, you have a much better story than mine. And so take the time to do whatever it takes to bring your body back into balance, back into a place where it can heal. And then you'll find the deepest, truest, most authentic expression of both your orgasm, your writer's voice, your voice, and your life right there from a place of peace and calmness.
Beautiful. Thank you. One more question, if I may. and I'd like to read you some more of your writing, if I may, again. After nearly 5 years of research, I was finally seeing that in order to change, we needed to expose ourselves. When I hid behind my self-hatred, I was not honoring my body. When I hid behind my secrets and shame, I was not honoring my soul. Now, I was listening to a new voice, or maybe remembering what the real me sounded like. Can you perhaps leave us by telling us what your research is like right now and what are your plans for the future?
Well, I've said this a couple times, but sometimes you have to hear it several times for it to sink into your body. And where I am finding the most potent version of my voice is in the places that I was silenced, or in the places that I silenced myself. So many of us, especially women, and you brought this up, we go into this victimhood of I've been silenced and I was silenced, and you come from this place of pain. Well, there's a point along the way that you do have control of your life. You can't help what happened to you in the past. But there's this point that you have to decide, yes, I've been silenced in the past. Am I going to continue silencing myself? And so where I am right now in my life as a woman, as a mother, as a grandmother that wants to model to both my family, both my 3 boys and my daughter and granddaughters, how to live in a world where it's safe to express yourself. And so I continue to do, I have another book coming out in August of 2021 called Chasing Temples, and I'm doing a solo show around it. And I will say, I haven't talked a lot about this, but one thing that I've done the past couple years is to not be in an intimate relationship with a man, with anybody. It was by choice. I really wanted to know my body where I am right now, and I really wanted to be clear on what's next for me. And it's been obviously with the pandemic in 2020, it made it much easier. But I will say this, it's been the absolute most sensual time in my life of just being in an intimate, relationship with myself, because I've gotten to know my body. I've never known my body at this age. I've never known my potential at this age. And so it's been, can more of us be curious with our bodies and where we are right now? And then be curious about what's possible. I'm also looking forward to sharing this with partners, and to any potential partners out there. As I said, this date with this man a couple of years ago, his biggest concern is this going to end up in the book? And I said, no, that's right now, that's you're safe with me. That was the story I needed to tell then. So I'm looking at a world of my world right now is, how can I fully express myself? And how can I also support others, especially voices, more diverse voices in the world, to express themselves? Because up until, a few decades ago, most of the stories that have been put out in the world were by white men. And so I want to fill the world with more diverse stories. So, take care of your body, and also just be curious as to, what happens to your body when you start expressing yourself more. What happens?
Betsy, it's been such an honor. Thank you so very much. A real pleasure meeting you and hearing you speak. And
likewise.
And sensing this energy. So I hope we get to talk about perhaps the second book, if you'd like to come back when that is out. I'd love to read that as well. So,
thank you.
Thank you so much.